I was probably a little too tough on the defense after that game. Obviously, the defense kept the Texans in that game versus the Seahawks. But the first few series, I was not satisfied with. The second and third series specifically, they allowed a 70-yard plus touchdown drive and an 80-plus yard touchdown drive. But by and large, the defense did some really good things. Offense was the issue in that game. There's a few things that have happened this week in the aftermath that they're gnawing at me, and I'm not saying this to be a rabble-rouser or as clickbait or anything. I'm genuinely concerned about a seeming disconnect between D'Amico's message and what the players are executing on the field. It's a weird situation. So if we start with the defense, and one thing that continues to agitate me was the week of the game, D'Amico talked about how they were going to get up and they were going to challenge Jackson Smith and Jigba in a way that other teams hadn't. Then the game comes, it's played, the cornerbacks are not up and pressing Jackson Smith and Jigba. DJ Bieneme, to his credit, asked a couple times yesterday about that situation after D'Amico had said after the game on Monday night that, hey, the game plan was to challenge Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's not what happened. Here's DJ asking him about it again.
The decision to not have Stingley press is often against JSN. Giving JSN free releases is a receiver that good. That's kind of almost that sense taking candy from a baby. So what kind of went into not having Stingley press JSN more often to disrupt the timing within his routes?
Yeah, our game plan was to, as I stated earlier in the week, to make sure we're aggressive, make sure we're getting hands-on and playing them tight and sticky. That was our game plan.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, DJ asked him again. He had to wait his turn because it was in that Zoom format. Here's DJ asking the question again for more clarification.
I guess in those instances, when Stingley's in off coverage, is that a decision by you guys? Is that a decision by him? Like, what kind of goes into, again, giving JSN when he's matched up against, one of you guys' best corner, give him off coverage and not necessarily disrupt him at the line of scrimmage versus the top of the route?
Again, our game plan was to get hands on JSN, play him aggressive, right? Challenge him each and every snap. That was our game plan.
Yeah, and it's hard for me not to interpret that as Stingley and Kamari Lassiter perhaps just didn't follow the game plan. They were making executive decisions out there on the field. Just by way of illustration, I'm going to show you. This was the first 9 or 10 snaps in the game. I circled Jackson Smith and Jigba and nary a defensive back near him. There were a few instances here, like on this one, where the first one he is aligned in the slot, and I think they were disguising a little bit whether Jalen Petrie had man coverage or not. But by and large, the entire first quarter, it was just a heavy dosage of off coverage, very few hands laid on Jackson Smith and Jigba early in the route. And I like this is concerning to me. If the stated game plan and the focus of the week was to play Jackson Smith and Jigba a certain way, and guys are going off the reservation and doing their own thing, I'd just love to know why. And if it's, were they scared of Jackson Smith and Jigba? I don't know. I'm left wondering and having to ask these questions. There's the touchdown, of course, off coverage, all of that. In some of these instances, certainly maybe it was the planned call, but by D'Amico's answers and the fact that we saw so little press coverage, I just have to think that those guys were making their own decisions. And that's concerning to me because the strength of this team is the defense, obviously. Going into last week, it was the first time in NFL history that the team that had the best scoring defense in the league was on a team that had a losing record. Like that's how bad the offense has been against competitive teams, at least. So there's that. Then there was the curious instance of the kickoff before, like at the end of the game. Texans there's 2:04 on the clock. Kaimi Fairbairn was instructed to kick out of bounds, according to D'Amico. Not out of bounds or into the end zone, but out of bounds so that you can get the benefit of the 2-minute warning, so you don't have to burn up a timeout when these guys get the ball back. I'm sorry about the standard definition on this. I had to zoom in on it. But here's D'Amico on that, just to be clear what the instructions were.
Yeah, the plan at the end of the game was kicking the ball out of bounds so we could utilize the 2-minute and had a timeout. And we did not execute that. Again, just goes to the entire game. So frustrating that we're not executing the things that we're coached to do.
Yeah, so kick out of bounds. Landry Locker asked Kaimi Fairbairn the question today about what happened there at the end.
Yeah, I was disappointed about how that play ended up. The game plan was clear to me when I was told it was kick it a touchback or kick it out of bounds.
Okay, just to be clear, what he says here.
Kick it a touchback or kick it out of bounds. We couldn't give them opportunity to get the ball and waste time and save that 2 minute. Analyzing the kick, I was a little bit too aggressive in that situation than I should have been. I should have been a lot more conservative, and I also just hit the kick. I looked at that. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And
I don't. All right, listen. Kicking out of bounds is a lot different than kicking out of bounds or kicking a touchback. If you kick it in the end zone there, they can return it. They don't have to kneel on it. They can return it. In a normal situation, it would be dumb, of course, because the touchback is at the 35. Correct me if I'm wrong. I reread the new kickoff rules to be sure about this because I never know quite. And I'm not so sure Kaimi Fairbairn understands it. Kicking out of bounds, the clock doesn't start. If you kick it into the end zone, yes, they can touch it. They can give you a touchback, but they can also return it, as they did. And that burns time up off the clock. And I don't know if this is a situation where, hey, I wanted to kick it out of bounds, but I also didn't want to hurt my net kickoff yards all that much, so I tried to kick it as deep as possible and out of bounds. That's if that's the case, that's selfishness. That's not a mental error. That's a conscious decision to go into business for yourself and your own stats there. So instance number 2 of just players not following instructions. It's not kicking out of bounds or a touchback. It's kicking out of bounds, and he didn't do it. And the lack of discipline in some key moments here. Aziz Elshire saying that he didn't hear the whistle or the whistle wasn't blown as he was driving Sam Darnold into the turf. Like, all right, come on, man. Like, I played this game. Like when you're hitting somebody on the sideline, you know where it is, and you know that you're hitting a quarterback, and you just own up to it. It's a lack of discipline. It's a lack of like Sam Darnold landed in the thick of the white, and you're landing on a quarterback. It's bad discipline. It's really, really bad discipline. If we get into the disconnect perhaps between D'Amico and CJ or just whatever the hell's going on with the offense right now, I'm going to leave Sarge's questions in here on this because I think it's relevant. So I'm not trying to take things out of context or anything. Sarge asked D'Amico about pre-snap communication being an issue.
Coach, it looked like the last game that when you all had some mistakes, it was because on the offensive side of the ball that the play clock kept running down. The play clock kept running down. It looked like that CJ was rushing the play. How do you as an offense execute getting to the line quicker, running the play faster, being more efficient?
Yeah, so I didn't feel like we were up against the clock versus Seattle. I didn't feel like that was the issue. I felt like we got the plays in and we were at the line of scrimmage. We had a lot of tempo plays. So I didn't feel that we were up against the clock per se. It's allowed plays to play and, I felt like we communicated well in that environment. It wasn't getting to the line and it wasn't getting the calls in or calling it. That wasn't the issue offensively, right? Our issues were post-snap, doing what we were supposed to do post-snap.
So there's that. And this is where I think I could feel myself going in through and when I played the audio I'm about to play from CJ, it would be easy to frame it as, well, D'Amico says there's no issue in the pre-snap communication, but CJ says that there's issues with the pre-snap communication. I could frame it that way. I think it's a little bit more nuanced like that than that. And we'll discuss it after I play this from CJ. Again, a question from Sarge, and I left the questioning in so we could see perhaps either the nuance or the disconnect.
Better, and D'Amico was saying that the post-snap has been something that you guys have been trying to focus in on and be a lot more clean with. What are you seeing that maybe is not ways in which you guys are executing post-snap that you want to clean up moving forward?
Just there's multiple things I could say. Probably the main thing, just communication pre-snap. Like, I think everything starts pre-snap, and the ball snaps can take that communication and pushing it forward to post-snap and making it, work. And that's execution in a nutshell. So I think that's what we need to do.
I like, and then he walks. Okay, I got to watch the end of that again. They had said beforehand this was going to be the last question, but there's something about
Better, and D'Amico was saying that
there's something about the body language here.
Execution in a nutshell. So I think that's what we need to do.
Okay, now that's how he usually leaves a press conference. I'm not going to read too much into that. So when I went back and I watched both of those 2 or 3 more times just to be sure that I didn't misrepresent anything. I think in D'Amico's answer, I almost detect a defensive Nick Caley, and because he talked a couple times about getting the call in on time and all of that. So that's different than perhaps, it's not CJ being able to read things pre-snap or whatnot, but then CJ specifically points to, hey, it all starts with the pre-snap communication. D'Amico, I've also struggled with this. D'Amico, he's been pretty blunt about CJ needing to play better. And he hasn't done it in a brutal way or anything. It's not like a Jim Morris senior with a young Peyton Manning type of way. But I don't know if it's been a little bit harsher than most coaches will almost defend their quarterback the same way they'll defend their coordinators and their other assistant coaches and everything. D'Amico's been pretty blunt about it. I think the pre-snap is certainly an issue. And I think there are times where it's pretty apparent that when it looks like maybe CJ isn't seeing things clearly, it's more that he and the receivers aren't on the same page, and especially with young receivers, it's got to be exact in that quick game. It's Jalen Noel's got to be precisely where he needs to be, or any of the other wide receivers. I don't mean to pick on Jalen Noel. Cody Stutes asked Jalen Noel about the quick game and the importance of. Let me see if I can pull this up. The importance of the quick game to kind of allay some of the issues with the blitzing and everything else.
Yeah, just being on the same page. That's the biggest thing at the end of the day, and our precision has to be on point, especially in the quick game. CJ's going to have to go through his reads quick, so the receivers got to be at the right spot at the right time. And I feel like there's been moments we've been good at it and moments we haven't been good at it. So just coming together and making sure that we're good when it comes time Sunday, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think this is the difficult thing, and this is, again, where I struggle, where on sports radio especially. Here on YouTube, it's a little bit more sedate. I don't know, calm, cool, and collected. I feel sedated. I feel sedated by this offense. It's multiple things, and it's a glitchy operation on offense in a lot of ways, and it becomes really difficult at times to point out when it's CJ's fault versus when it's receiver's fault. There's definitely times where receivers haven't sight adjusted and gotten their eyes on CJ. There's other times where CJ is either misfired in a clean pocket or under duress. All of that. It's disjointed everywhere. And it's just hard to 2 years in a row just revert to the knee-jerk automatic, well, it's definitely Nick Caley's fault. There's a lot of things that are Nick Caley's fault. There's a lot of things that are various personnel's fault. The overarching thing that concerns me right now is that if there's guys on defense that aren't listening to D'Amico's message, what does that mean on the side of the ball where D'Amico doesn't have that same cachet, that same impact, and that same obvious level of expertise? I don't know. And they've got a tough test this weekend versus the 49ers. The 49ers last week versus the Falcons were playing with a bunch of, playing with the Fred Warner's backups on defense, and they took it to. They were psychotically physical and aggressive and all those things that you expect from a Robert Saleh or D'Amico Ryan's defense. So this is going to be a tough test. It's at home. There's a lot of things the Texans are up against, and I was hoping to see that some of the improvements that we saw from the previous 2 games were going to carry over versus the Seahawks. We obviously didn't see that. We can talk about the offensive line in another live stream. But that's where I am with it right now. I'm uncomfortable with it. I hope that whatever led to apparently the cornerbacks ignoring CJ's stated goal this week, that maybe the conversations they have in getting through that obstacle can get through some of these other obstacles. The Kaimi Fairbairn apparently ignoring Frank Ross's direction and or D'Amico Ryan's instructions. I don't know if I've ever been on a team. I don't know if I've ever been on a team or covered a team where insurrection by the kicker was an issue, or a kicker going off and do his own thing. The closest we can maybe get to it is Sebastian Janikowski, but those were more chemical dependency issues that led to that stuff. It certainly wasn't. Kaimi Fairbairn doesn't have that excuse. He's as sober as a priest on Sunday. Well, most priests on Sunday, as far as I can tell. Let me get to the comments here. And thank you, everybody, for... I have been checking the comments to be sure that my mic is on. A few of you brought up some good things, but there's certainly I'm frustrated. Can someone explain to CJ that he doesn't run backwards into sacks? There's that. Okay, one thing that we can pin on CJ. You got to stop doubling the yardage on sacks, especially when you're down back in your own end zone. And for every time you can point to a quarterback bailing backwards, but then making a great throw, you have to remember the multiple times that doesn't work out. It's a bad habit to get into. We can all agree on that, and I think CJ would agree as well. You got to stop doubling and tripling the yardage that you get on sacks and potentially putting yourself at risk of a safety. I've got a volleyball game to get to. I'll get out of this funk. I need to move on to the 49ers at some point. It's Wednesday, damn it. This is the quick turnaround that we talk about.